Everyone has like a unique essence, but I think we have to sort of unbury it from years of repression and just external influences. And I think that's like the great challenge of our lives, is to like uncover this thing that is really us and then find ways to express it. So I think the process of creating a brand is exactly that.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Have you ever wondered, am I putting my best face forward? Are my prospects seeing me the way I want them to see me? Well, our guest today is NelsonQuest. He's the CEO of AgentFire.com. He's going to share some very candid moments about his journey, how he once saw himself and how he sees himself now, and the bold moves he's made along the way.
Nelson, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll jump right into it pretty good, but I want all the listeners to know that I've been working with Nelson, his company now since what? 2013. And they're the only ones that build real estate websites for me, period.
Yeah. Can I interject here for a moment? Because I wanted to take credit for finding him.
That is true. You did.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found Nelson. I scouted out. It's like, I'm looking for the best of the best. And I found him and I introduced him to Michael and it made me look like a hero. So thank you, Nelson.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. 2013 is when, I guess Agent Fire was founded in 2012, but I mean, you guys were among my first clients. I was still building all the websites myself back then. And so yeah, if anything, thanks for giving me an opportunity. That first year in particular was a tricky one.
I bet.
Oh, yeah, I bet it was.
We know how first years go.
Yes, we do. We sure do.
Yeah, I want to jump into that actually. So you said that like in 2011, you had an epiphany moment that changed your life completely. What happened in that situation? You mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, sure. I would say it starts a little bit before then, but basically I would just say just growing up, I had a just really rough go at things from like maybe 12 to 16 years old. I just had, I lost all my friends. I just had, my face was covered in acne. I was going through puberty but like, I really lost all my friends. Like I didn't, even at school, nobody wanted to talk to me. Like just to be seen near me was, you know how everyone is back then when you got your cliques, I guess, in your groups. And so I just had no friends forever. Yeah. Maybe fast forward to, I always had difficulty with women. And then 2011, after just, I thought I'd found like the perfect girl for me. And then she left me to get back with a previous boyfriend who was like better than me in every possible way. He was philosophical. He was rational. I was just a young idiot. And, he had his career in order. I was a mess. I had nothing going for me. I only cared about like having sex with attractive women. That was like my main just thing in life. And everything that I did was with that sort of goal in mind. And so anyway, when she left, it was just a realization that I was a loser. I had a lot of things to work on. And I was just really depressed, and I was depressed for months. And then one day I was in an apartment in Brooklyn at the time, sitting on the roof, looking at New York City, which has a weird way of making you feel really, really small if you don't feel good with where you're at in life. I reached what I felt was I reached like just an absolute bottom. And then I had like this kind of singular moment. I don't know anyone else. I've never met anyone else that has had like a legitimate epiphany. I'm sure people have had it. So I think, unfortunately, for as much as I'd love to be able to communicate in words what it's like, I think very few people, even hearing this right now, will be able to even somewhat understand it, which is like had this like single second of realization that all of the negative energy that I was experiencing, so all of the sadness and depression and anxiety, I had this like realization that I can actually choose how I want to experience this. And like in that single moment, I remember it was like a little after midnight. It was freezing cold out. I was smoking a cigarette. I was listening to Kanye West, All of the Lights. Like I remember everything about that moment. And I just having that realization, I started crying. I started like jumping up and down as high as I could. And then from that moment, like I went back to my apartment. The first thing I did, I started ordering books. I started training for an Ironman. And then a year and a half later, I actually flew out to South Africa to compete in an Ironman. I'd never run more than like a couple blocks. That's the year that I really just doubled down into, like that's the year I doubled down into my business. For multiple years after that epiphany, there was not a single day where I didn't spend like every second of every day working to improve some aspect of myself. I even got to the point where I started experimenting with polyphasic sleep, which is basically like you only sleep for 2 total hours in a day. You sleep 30 minutes every, I think it was like 4 or 6 hours. And I did that for many months. That was interesting, but definitely one of the worst things I ever did. That just destroyed my, it's not healthy. It's sleep deprivation. But yeah. So I think I had an interesting, and I've been able to do some really impressive stuff since that epiphany. I think if I hadn't had that epiphany, I would have just had a very normal life, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but compared to like the life that I'm living now, that would be a death sentence. I would rather die than like, go back to that. So that's a quick summary.
It's a good summary. It's a good summary.
Yeah.
There's a couple of takeaways I really like. First off, I don't think you're the only one that's ever had epiphany like that, and are the first one that can't necessarily articulate exactly how they feel. I think it's hard to catch those moments and articulate what they are. I think all of us struggle with that. But I know Tanya too, can look back at times like that when, that inner voice spoke and said, this is what you need to do, this, like this, you need to move. I just think that there's not a lot of people that would do what you did and actually act upon it. You know what I mean? Like an epiphany can be really strong, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for a month. But for it to be a motivating factor that the next thing you know, you're running and training for an Ironman, and completing that shows a resolve, I think, that probably could contribute to your success.
Well, there's 2 things you just said that I would love to just go like a tiny bit deeper on. I think they're really important. One is, in terms of my epiphany, I think it was actually easy for me to act because I had literally just reached a point in life where I just completely bottomed out. I think so. I've talked to people that have just reached the point where they're literally just, as far down as they can possibly go. And I think, like when you're forced into a corner and you have no other, there's one other option, but is, just taking control of your life and just realizing, you don't have to be a slave to the patterns and rules that you've been indoctrinated with by yourself and by the greater society around you for your entire life. And then also regarding the inner voice, that's actually one of the things that I'm even very interested in right now. Nietzsche is one of my favorite philosophers, and he talks a lot about, we have a voice within us that sometimes we choose not to listen to it because when it speaks demandingly and we fear it. I think it's like part of realizing my potential and being able to do a lot of the things that I've done has been about just like uncovering that inner voice that I had just buried and locked away. And the more that I am able to uncover that inner voice and just listen to it, the better my life has been. And I just, you can almost listen to it. Like once you get to the point where you trust it, then like life becomes really easy because you just like listen to the things it tells you to do and you don't have to really give, and like, it's never fucking wrong.
Yeah. Trust the gut. Trust the gut. A lot of people say it like that, right?
Yeah.
The old folk would say it that way. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And speaking of other folks and old folks, I guess, was there any particular influential person for you that kind of helped you to get to that epiphany or helped you to see that through once you had it? Were there mentors perhaps in your life or just people that were influential?
Nobody. I think my parents are probably like a really negative influence there. And so I don't mean that in a, like my parents, I love, my dad went from poverty to very successful. And so I think what most parents try to do is they try to give their kids everything that they never had. And I think that's like the worst possible thing that you can do to a kid. And like my kids are going to, they're going to suffer. I'm thinking about just having like two separate houses, like a nice house for me, and then just like a super shitty house for them. They have to just struggle with everything. So my dad, like he was actually way worse with my younger sisters. I was the oldest, so but he just tried to make my life easy. And so by the time I never had to like think critically. If I got into trouble, he was able to get me out of it. And it's like I never had to really deal with any circumstances for a lot of the dumb shit that I used to do. And so he was like a horrible influence there because he didn't like, the best thing he did actually was there was a point where another girl had broken up with me and I was depressed. We were supposed to start a business together, and I didn't do any of the stuff that he was telling me to do because I was just depressed over this girl. And so he said to me, I just spent a bunch of years in college and like thinking that, okay, when I get out of college, I'm going to be set. So I'm just going to start a business. My dad, he's smart, he's successful. I'll just fucking leech off of that and I'll be good. And so, but then I was depressed over this girl. I didn't do any of the stuff he was telling me to do. And then he said to me, he's like, you know what? We're not going to do this business. It's gone in the garbage. And you got to figure out your life. You have about, 2 weeks to do that. That was like the best thing he ever did for me. I was crushed, but then I was like, all right, well now I literally have to now, like, for the first time in my life, like, figure out, how I'm going to survive. And yeah, so that was the best thing he ever did for me. But again, as far as like models and stuff like that helped me, no, like that's where the epiphany hit so hard, is because, I had basically gone through my entire life thinking a certain way, thinking certain things were going to make me happy or give me fulfillment. And then all of a sudden there was like a single moment where because I think when people are depressed, you think there's like a whole process you're supposed to go through, or, you're supposed to, like, especially with heartbreak, I'm sure you guys have like had your hearts broken at some point.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Dozens of times.
Yeah, me too. That, like, lots of times. And so, and you think there's like a whole process for this, where it's like, all right, I'm going to be sad for a certain amount of time. Like, I remember standing on that roof, I was thinking, like, I was literally trying to calculate how long I was going to be sad for. And in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, like everything I've read on forums, because I'd spent like the previous few weeks just like Googling how long does heartbreak last. And I figured it's going to be like at least a year based in it. Anyway. So, and that was like kind of where it was like, what are you doing? Like, you're trying to calculate how long you're going to be depressed. And so that was like, again, like having this epiphany was this like realization that, man, I can actually kind of make my own rules with some of this stuff. I don't need to go to a psychologist, or I don't need to see a therapist. Like I can if I can figure this stuff out myself, yeah. So yeah, I didn't have any like mentors or anything else. But once I did have the epiphany and I started wanting to consume knowledge, that's where I like my brain, like everything in my energy was just like hungry to learn, especially stuff that was counter to everything that I'd been taught. And so that's where I discovered philosophy. That's where I discovered, I would say like Taoism is probably the philosophy that most interests me. I love ancient Chinese philosophy. And so I was just like really, I guess, sensitive at that point. And so every word I read felt like an orgasm. Like even like I'd read a lot of Tony Robbins stuff. And, I was just so ready to have my mind changed that like it all felt really revelatory. So I would say, yeah, if I were to list out like a mentor, I would say Tony Robbins. But yeah, as far as in my personal life, no, I didn't have anyone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They went out and found the knowledge that you needed. And that, I think that's another takeaway. We have access to that. Somebody else we had on, they said that I think Tanya asked, well, did you have a mentor? And they were like, not really, but I read a lot. So I really have had hundreds of mentors. And I thought that was put real well, which effectively you're saying also. And, I study ancient Hebrew. I'm just really like fascinated with the cradle of civilization right there in Mesopotamia area. And it's sort of the same way, you know what I mean? It's like being led out of what you knew, being led out of the land of your father, because you got to make your own way type of a thing. And, it's interesting. And it's been now the stickability, because for you, it's been better than a decade, and you're still using, no doubt, everything you've learned to be more and more and more successful. And we get the benefit, our listeners don't necessarily know, but like we started this thing, we get the benefit of knowing, you even back then, we know you had a great product back then, and, you've just improved on it over the years and been really good to us in that real estate space. So it's your hard work's clearly shown, to that. Yeah.
I think especially Bible's really interesting. I think just all ancient religions have lots of things that we can learn. Religion's kind of getting like thrown out maybe with the bathwater at the moment, but like because there's a lot of connection to like corruption within the church or within like institutions versus the actual teachings. And I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. I think what you were talking about, there's a sort of a lack of becoming an adult rituals like in the modern age. So in the past, like the idea was if you're a kid in a tribe, like, they're teaching you everything they know, right? They're teaching you how to hunt. They're teaching you how to make fire and all this stuff. And there comes a point where like you have to go and leave, and like you can't come back until you've killed a wolf or you survive for a week or and so there's like a point where it's kind of the rubber meets the road. And I think that's like sorely lacking in modern society.
Oh, I would agree with that. That's a good point. Yeah, definitely think
absolutely. That. Well, you mentioned, Nelson, that you realized at some point you weren't really putting your best self out there. And if we're relating it to, personal branding, and really that's what it's about. If you're trying to attract a certain kind of life or business, you want to put out what you're trying to attract into the universe. You want to put out the right thing, right? So when you realize that you weren't putting your best self out there, what is it exactly that you felt like you needed to change?
I would say everything. I mean, literally everything. I mean, I wouldn't, everything. Like,
You were a white page.
Well, that shows how impressionable you were, because you said, just words were everything, and everything I just wanted to grab onto. And that's impressionable, right? And if we're going to grow or learn in life, that's the one thing we need to be. We need to be impressionable. We need to have things be able to impress us, because that's the only way it teaches us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That could be nowadays, in an age of information, that can be a stalwart. Like that could really freeze us in our tracks, right? Because there's so much that you can consume, but it may not be the right thing. That's interesting, But I think that goes back to that gut, like you said, that voice. It's not going to lead you wrong. It's learning to trust it is super important.
But learning to trust it, but also it can become corrupted if we're just consuming, because right now we live in an age of information overload. I think people were probably like just more rational and overall scored higher on intelligence. Like we may have more access to information now, but it's too much information, and so much of it is just not relevant, but we make it super relevant because we have these primitive mechanisms within us, like specifically the prefrontal cortex that we haven't evolved to adapt to this modern information age. And so when we see news, a lot of it is just garbage, but we think it's important, and we're like trained to want to think that it's important. And one of the most important things for me over the last couple of years in particular has been learning how to curate the information that I allow myself to consume. So I don't use Instagram. I have it for my business. It's important for my business, but I have other people that manage it. I just will text message like a thing I want to write. Like I never use Instagram. Don't log in. Facebook, don't use it at all. I still have to use it for my business. We do lots of ads and stuff like that. But since I've removed these things from my life, like when I was consuming these things, just because of the nature of my work, where I'm like always in front of a computer, I always have my cell phone on me. Yeah, those are the things that those have really taken me off the path, so to speak. And I think, just like learning how to really limit the amount of information that we allow to enter our consciousness is probably the most, I would say, the most important skill to build in the modern age.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The filtering of information is super important.
So true. I'm
the same way. I get my news from people that I trust that watch the news. I don't watch a lot of news because I'm not a negative guy, and it tends to just be bent that way. And I just don't want to, I'm busy. I want to do some other stuff. I mean, I think it's sort of like writing your own rules a little bit, putting up your own guardrails that help you. I know this helps us in business, and it'd be interesting to see if you parlay that into your success in business too. I know I do. The more we focus specifically on things, the more successful we tend to be, and then cull these other time stealers and attention getters out of our path, because it just gives us anxiety and makes us think we're missing out on things. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. Time is the most difficult, most important asset to manage. Time is how we generate money. Time is everything. So what we direct it towards is ultimately what we are able to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
We are what we consume.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, what would most people be surprised to learn about you?
Play video games, play role-playing games.
There you go.
I guess I'm not sure. I guess there's a lot. I don't know. I dance salsa really well, at a pro level.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you still in Brooklyn?
No, I live in Medellin, Colombia.
Nice. Thought that I knew you had an office there, but I didn't know if you lived there.
I've been here, since actually a little after we started working together, I guess. So
oh wow.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome.
So Nelson, what one message do you want to leave our listeners with today when it comes to their personal brand?
Man, it's super tricky. I think being authentic is the most. Essentially, I think everyone has a unique essence, but I think we have to sort of unbury it from years of repression and just external influences. And I think that's the great challenge of our lives, is to uncover this thing that is really us, and then find ways to express it. So for me, salsa has been really instrumental there. Fighting has been really instrumental there, because at the beginning of every process, whether it's building a brand, building a bit, whatever it is, essentially everyone starts out the same, where you are just copying what other people do that is successful, and that's where everyone starts, right? It's in salsa, you look at certain moves and you try to imitate those moves as best you can. Do the same in business, do the same with your brand, and then there's this process of mastery, and so eventually you get to the point where you've copied everyone else's moves, and then you start kind of adding your own essence to those things. And eventually you get to the point, like in salsa, for example, like at the highest level, you watch a really like amazing salsa dancers, and they're not thinking about different movements or pattern. Like they're simply existing, right? Their essence is out, and salsa is really cool in particular because it's like a melding of essences with someone else. And so I would say the same with business. It's uncovering the thing that we are. There's a lot of imitation, a lot of just like kind of copy and paste sort of approach in the beginning, just learning the steps, repetitions, but eventually you get to higher and higher levels, and eventually it just becomes expression. So now where I sit down at my desk in the morning, and it's just, if I'm working on like an ad campaign or something like that, I don't need to go out and copy someone else. Like I've done all the best courses on how to write copy, and I'm continuing to improve that stuff. But now it's just a matter of like, okay, I'm already at like highest level, and now it's just a matter of finding unique ways to express myself. And when I do that, like especially right now with Agent Fire, like the growth that we've had over the last couple of years, been super explosive, and a lot of that is because it's all part of me now. I'm not like going through the reps anymore. It's just, I sit down and it just comes out.
Instinctual.
It's
Instinctual.
you've reached the art form of what you do. And I've never heard anybody explain it like that. It's one of the best explanations I've ever heard. So that fantastic takeaway to that. We'll talk about it all the time. Well, fake it till you make it. I think that might be what they're trying to say. I don't like fake it till you make it. I like do it till you make it. Your explanation of it to me is one of the best I've ever heard, because when you do long enough like that, then you've reached that spot in your craft where it's art. You already have the steps down. That's really
I think that's what everyone wants too. It's just like we want to express ourselves in a way where we feel like naked, where we feel like other people can actually see us for what we are. And I think the process of creating a brand is exactly that. It's like fake it till you make it is I think it's not the worst advice, like, and it's well-intentioned advice, because initially, like, we want to, it makes sense that we don't have like social proof in the beginning. We don't have authority in the beginning. When I was trying to get you guys as clients, I don't have like a massive portfolio of websites and testimonials that I can point you guys to. I gotta kind of fake it a little bit. I gotta sell some of my enthusiasm a little bit to and some of my youth, whatever small advantages I have. And, obviously the best advantage is just to have case studies and this massive business. I don't have any of that. So you got to kind of like fake it a little bit, but again, it's not really the advice is well-intentioned, but it's probably not good. But yeah, initially it's just, again, you are just copying other people. Like in anything you do, when you start out, like you copy other people. When a baby learns to walk, it's like looking at other people and it's like trying to do what they're doing. And but there's this process, and ultimately you want to get to that point where it's just like, you've done all the steps, and you reach this level where you're just, you're, especially with business, is cool because, occupational is like an important part of who we are, and we want to be doing things that we enjoy. And when you can express yourself within like a business sense, it is sort of distinct from like salsa or fighting or any of that stuff, because it's this like global competition, because a business is ultimately like a competition against ultimately ourselves more than anything. But it is like this sort of like everyone has a business, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and like not everyone dances and fights, and so it's really interesting in that sense. Like it's for me, it's like the ultimate competition.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Great.
Well, you're obviously traveled, so I'm going to ask you a question we ask everybody that's on the show. If our listeners had the freedom to visit anywhere in the world, what place would you recommend to them to visit, and why?
Man, I would probably say China, just because I think travel is extremely. I think it's there's two ways to travel, right? There's kind of the touristy way to travel, and there's immersion travel, and I think that's most important from a growth perspective, because when you go somewhere where everything is different from what you know, it gives you a perspective and context through which you can analyze your culture, the things you believe, and you have this like stark contrast where maybe for the first time in your life, you're able to actually look outside of the bubble that you've always existed in, and be able to like make critical decisions as far as like, are these things that I believe really serving me? Like this, I saw these Chinese people do these, they walk backwards for exercise. They do this weird Tai Chi stuff. And then, from my bubble, this all looks sort of silly, but then you go there and you're immersed in it, and you understand that what they're doing, like the Tai Chi isn't just like silly movements. It's actually expressing their essence through movement, like removing friction, all these things that are incredible for like personal development and growth. And so, yeah, I would say go to the place that just seems most foreign to you. And for me, that was definitely China.
Yeah, that's a great one. Actually, my two daughters have been to China. I haven't made it there yet. But yeah, that's the first time we've heard that, and I love the explanation of why. That's really good, because I've always believed that too. It's part of the reason we asked the question. Seeing how other people in the world do it helps us be better people and understand how other cultures are really dealing with the same thing every other human deals with, but this is how they deal with it. And it's very interesting.
Yeah. I'm here in Colombia right now, which is one of the poorer countries in the world. I think it's considered a third world country. I train with people at my gym that I can't even afford wrist wraps. Like they're using like medical bandages to like to wrap their hands. They're using like gloves that have holes in them. Just a mess. They're like poor. But then you realize like for a kid to be spoiled, they actually need so little. Like if they have a roof and they have some version of PlayStation and food, like they can be spoiled, and because I'm like eating a lot of these guys, and I always used to think I'd go to these gyms and I always thought like, I wonder what our hunger is going to be like when compared to each other, because I've had like my dad was really successful. He gave me everything I needed. I wouldn't say I was too spoiled, but anyway. And then you go, you're fighting someone who doesn't have anything. You expect like they're going to have this tremendous hunger, and then you find a lot of them are actually like really lazy. And like it's so easy to become lazy just with the absolute minimum.
Yeah, with minimum. I think too, I've traveled a good bit in Central America, and I think too, people sometimes they don't have anywhere to go or do, and that
there's nothing to strive for.
There's nothing to strive for, and I think I've run into that before. Where if you took that same person out and you gave them put them in a place where there was opportunity, many of them would really excel. What took you to Colombia? Was it? Did you follow a girl down there?
No. Well, I would say that was probably one of the main reasons. Like I thought Colombia was like the highest probability that I would find love. Like because I think beyond, obviously there's a lot of beautiful women here, and there's a higher proportion or ratio of women to men. I'm understating that. Like the women here are gorgeous. Like you go anywhere and it's pretty amazing. But so I thought, but that was definitely the main. I wouldn't have admitted this like 10 years ago, but that was the main reason I went to Colombia. I traveled all through South America. I'm Puerto Rican by blood. I'd always wanted to, like, I'd always hear my parents speaking Spanish. We'd eat like Spanish food, go to my grandma's house, like everything's Spanish, and or Latin culture. And so I wanted to experience that for myself. And that's why when I came here, I started dancing salsa. I just completely immersed myself into the culture but also there's a lot of advantages to living here. So when I realized I had my own business, living in the U.S. is really expensive, especially in New York. It's just it is a rat race. And so moving here, I was having big, delicious, like healthy steak dinners, like a big steak at a really nice restaurant. When I first got here was maybe like $7 US, like for a steak that would have been $100 easy in the US. Right. Cost of living was great. I was spending $100 on my room in an apartment here. Everything is just super cheap. My average lunch was like $2. And like also climate's really nice. There's definitely it's definitely dangerous here. Like don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But I found that all the benefits to greatly outweigh any disadvantages.
Hey, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
Yes, I do too.
And you are too, Nelson. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Sure do. Tell everybody, what's the best place to connect with you?
Sure. You can check me out. I'm on YouTube. I've just started on English, so NelsonQuest. My Spanish channel, if any of you guys speak Spanish, is actually like really popular here in South America. It's at NelsonQuest ESP. I have NelsonQuest.com, and Agent Fire is my business. AgentFire.com.
All right.
Yep. Well, we've enjoyed working with you and getting to know you. And today we've gone a little bit deeper into that relationship, and what an incredible person, Nelson. So thank you for taking your time with us today.
And you guys are awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And thank y'all for joining us on Be Bold Branding.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.